Good evening, and welcome to the 2024 Associated Students of Colorado State University Speaker of the Senate debate. Live from the University Ballroom, my name is Tate Paisley.
And I am Bailey Borkowski, your CTV Thursday night news anchors. The Senate represents the student body of Colorado State University, and the Speaker is in charge of leading ASCSU Senate to best serve the students of Colorado State University.
Two Senate leaders have thrown their hat into the ring for Speaker of the Senate.
International Affairs Committee Chair Hayden
and Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Chair Enock Montanti.
CTV does not endorse any specific campaign, but seeks to provide fair and equal coverage of all the candidates. Students can vote on RamWeb from April 1st through the 3rd. Now, let's go over the rules of the debate.
You will be allocated 1 minute for opening statements. You will have 45 seconds to answer general questions, 30 seconds for rebuttal, which you may request by raising your hands, and another minute for candidate-specific questions. Viewers may submit comments and questions in the YouTube live stream that will be asked. Please make it clear in your question which candidate or candidates the question is directed to.
Now that we have met our candidates, we will start with opening statements. We will go from left to right, starting with Mr. Montanti. A reminder that 1 minute is allotted for opening statements. Mr. Montanti, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. Hello, my name is Enock Montanti. I'm the chair of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusions Affairs Committee within ASCSU, and I am running for your Speaker of the Senate. I wholeheartedly want to improve the Senate in the best way possible, and I aim to make this a fair, just, fun place.
Thank you, Mr. Montanti. Mr. Taylor, you now have the floor for your opening statement.
Well, my name is this on?
It takes a second.
Okay, testing, is this on yet? No. The switch is on. Is this on now? Okay. My name is Hayden Taylor, and I've been in the Senate space 2 years now. I've enjoyed it quite a bit. I'm the chair of the Internal Affairs Committee, so I have a decent knowledge of the space, definitely. I'm a sophomore studying political science with a minor in legal studies, and my campaign is focused on advocacy and on being able to be a voice of all students at this university, because I think that's the biggest thing that ASCSU does, and that's ultimately what the job is.
Thank you. Moving on, we will move into the general questions. Starting off with a question directed at both of you. It is, as the campus transitions into a new era of new leadership, how do you plan to collaborate with administrators, new and old, in order to keep campus safe, engaging, and welcoming to all of those who wish to come here? Mr. Montanti, you may start first.
I plan on reaching out to all the leaders, new and old, incumbent, and in their last days, I speak. I plan to reach out to them and get as much information from them. I know they have been here in this institution for far longer than I have been here, but I understand that with that it comes certain viewpoints and ideologies that I must take into consideration when making my decisions that would affect the larger student body. I also understand that I am the person who meant to represent the student body, and I will make sure that their voices are heard by these individuals who have been here far longer than I, making sure that the current incoming freshman class is also heard along with the sophomores, juniors, and seniors who have been here.
Thank you, Mr. Montanti. Mr. Taylor, you may now begin your response.
Well, ASCSU has had a lot of allegations about being out of touch with the students, and that's definitely something I think that we can fix, and that's something that I would love to help to fix. And it's not just ASCSU that's out of touch, it's CSU as well. We all know that the cost of getting a college education is too high, and the cost of living on campus is too high, and that's something that students feel, and that we can be opening communication, I think, and being able to just have discussions between CSU admin and CSU students, and being able to all get on the same page.
Thank you, Mr. Taylor.
As a reminder, please talk closer to your mic so we can hear you better. Moving on to the second question. What does accountability and transparency look like as Speaker of the Senate? Mr. Montanti, you may begin.
Accountability and transparency looks like owning up to our actions, making sure that we address the issues and harms caused by any actions done by us, as well as with transparency, making sure that the students actually know what's going on. They're aware of what's going on. They can see what's going on, and at any given time that we can best answer their question, or at the very least, get them in touch to people who can better answer their questions in whatever that may be. And also in the case of furthering my point in accountability, making sure that we properly address and move forward in making sure that we do not repeat the same harm that we have caused.
Thank you very much. Mr. Taylor, you may begin.
Can I get that question again? Is this on?
It should be.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. All right. The question is, what does accountability and transparency look like as Speaker of the Senate?
Well, accountability is about facing the students who you make decisions on behalf of and being able to have communication with them. We saw the letter to the editor posted in the Collegian a few months ago saying that candidates, much like myself, go out onto the plaza each spring, and then we go into our offices and we do nothing and we don't communicate with students. And at the end of the day, that's what the job is. It's about communicating with students. And so it's about being accountable in a way that leaders in ASCSU in the past have not been. And with transparency, not many students know what ASCSU does. When folks in ASCSU talk to students on campus, a lot of them have questions of just like the basics of what does ASCSU do, and they don't know a lot of that.
Thank you very much, Mr. Taylor.
Thank you.
Moving on to the next question. How are you going to manage your personal time in office, balancing classes and your involvements? Mr. Montanti?
As many can attest, I tend to be all over the place. But when it comes to managing my time, I always make sure that I have scheduled my week accordingly and making sure that week is organized according as such to my classes, to my work schedule, to my own personal life, to make sure that I am not burning myself out and making sure that I am best attending to all of my meetings, my scheduled dates and meetings that I may have, and making sure that I'm being there and attending at least 30 minutes early, because if I'm being honest, if you're on time, you're already late.
Thank you. Mr. Taylor?
Well, I'm decent at time management. I basically have only 2 commitments, and that's ASCSU and my classes. And I've been able to manage that well up until this point, so I think I can definitely continue with that. One of the things I like to do is just make a list of all of the things I need to do, and then being able to check those off one by one. And so I definitely have the time to commit to this, which is something that I think people in the past have had some issues with, but I can definitely do the job and put in the time with that.
Thank you.
Moving on to the next question, what is your perspective on the issue regarding empty Senate seats and lack of representation within certain colleges, student offices, and other groups in the Senate? And how will you address this issue? Mr. Montanti, you have the floor.
So, to address the empty Senate seats within the Senate chambers, I feel like that is the work of us getting our name out there and letting students know what we do, and actually encouraging both me as a Senate leadership and then any Senate leadership, as well as the fellow senators and associate senators within that space, to also reach out to those said students, as well as trying our best to make sure that students feel comfortable and safe within the space, because I understand that a lot of what prevents a lot of students from coming within that space is hearing a lot of the hostilities and hearing about supposed hostilities that have happened within the space and all the harm that has come from there.
Thank you. Mr. Taylor?
Well, the empty Senate seats falls on Senate leadership. It's about us being able to communicate to students why they should be getting involved. And students should be getting involved because all students must be passionate about something. I joined because I'm passionate about something, and anybody in that space joined because we're all passionate about something. So it's about being able to find the people who have passions and will be willing to get involved. And to do that, we need to have communication with students, something that's been lacking quite a bit in the past. And so we need to be going to classes and to clubs and student organizations and finding students who will be getting involved with us.
Thank you.
This next question is addressed specifically to Mr. Taylor himself. However, you may still request a rebuttal if you so please. You ran last year for Speaker of the Senate. How has your campaign changed from the previous years regarding your campaign goals, Mr. Taylor?
That's a good question, and that's one that I've gotten quite a few times. And to be honest, I get it. You know, I lost last time, so what am I doing back? The ultimate vision is the exact same as it was last time. I am passionate about ASCSU and I'm passionate about CSU. And so I'm keeping that same passion and that same vision, and I'm just kind of changing the strategy. I hadn't seen a campaign last time when I did my campaign, and now that I've done that and I have that experience, I think I'll be successful this time.
Thank you.
This question is aimed at Mr. Montanti. You said 2 of the Senate goals is to make it a more communicative and to have more student engagement. How do you plan to achieve these goals?
I think the first primary step that if I am elected in that position is to reach out both to directors of SDPS offices, which are represented within that organization, as well as reaching out to college councils, as well as reaching out to any empty Senate seats that might not be SDPS or college council, and seeing where we can potentially work within them to fill those seats, as well as making sure that ASCSU as a whole body is actually reaching out to the students whenever we can, whenever we have the time.
All right, thank you. And we have a rebuttal from Mr. Taylor. You have 30 seconds.
A lot of people don't know this, but the ASCSU Senate actually has social media accounts. They've just been inactive since the 20-teens. So it's about getting those back active again, and so we can post and get students involved. It's about passive involvement and not being active. It's just about getting students to know what we in the Senate do.
Thank you.
Moving back to some general questions directed at both of you. What clubs, organization, and committees have you served in, both with and outside CSU, and how will those experiences translate effectively in your role as ASCSU Speaker of the Senate? Mr. Montanti?
All right, I'm going to run through them first and then swing back to them. I am a part of the Sci-Fi Fantasy Club here on campus. I am also a part of the Ranime Club on campus. I have also, in the past, did wrestling in high school. I have also been into every committee, both from this year and last administration. I have recently started to attend Accessibility Caucus. I work in the Pride Resource Center. I have gone to several SDPS events, and I think that is it. Swinging back to all of that, it means that I show that I am actively engaging within the student population, within the student community, that I understand the wide breadth of diverse students that attend this university, and I want best to reach out to them, and I am willing to go that extra
Thank you, Mr.
mile.
Montanti. That is your time. Mr. Taylor.
I wasn't involved much in my high school, and that's because I hadn't found my place yet, and since coming to college, I've definitely found my place in ASCSU. In high school, I was in Boy Scouts, and that gave me a lot of the kind of leadership qualities that would be good in a position like this. And since coming to CSU, I've been involved in the College Council of the College of Liberal Arts, it's LADLC, and now ASCSU, and I've been involved in those and passionate about those. Additionally, I've known that I wanted to hold this position since only a couple of months into my time in the Senate, so I've gotten to get an education from 2 of the best speakers I could possibly hope to watch be in that position. Speakers DeSalvo and Ayala, they've both been excellent, and so I've been able to...
Thank you, Mr. Taylor. That is your time.
Thank you.
Moving on to the next question. The Senate is responsible for a lot of different functions and actions. What do you believe is the most important action or function that ASCSU is responsible for? Mr. Montanti, you have the floor.
I believe the most important function that ASCSU is responsible for is the spending of student fees, and giving the students a say of, hey, where's my tuition going? I believe that is the most important function, and how we as an organization best operate in showing the students that, hey, you have a say in where your money is.
Thank you. Mr. Taylor?
The most important thing that we do in the Senate is advocacy. That's almost all that we do if you think about it, because when we fund things, that's advocating on behalf of something. When we pass resolutions stating a stance on something, that's being an advocate on behalf of something. So the best thing that we can do is get students involved and be able to to make connections with those students to be able to be the best advocates that we can possibly be, and that's what I will plan to do in this position.
Thank you very much.
Moving on. If conflicts arise within the Senate chamber, such as heated debates and arguments, how will you step in to mediate? Mr. Montanti?
depends on the severity of the conflict, but in the case of like heated debate in which we are just going in circles and circles, I would have to remind the Senate chambers that we must remain germane and that we have to focus on the topic that would further the discussion on the bill, resolution, and or lex that we are currently seeing. If it is something to like extreme constant ad hominem, I'd have to reach out to both senators independently, figure out a time to some sort of way where we can mediate the conflict, as well as remind them of also use the systems in place as well to make sure that both parties do understand that there are consequences to acting in such a manner.
Thank you. Mr. Taylor?
Discussion and debate is a good thing. I love when we get to have a lot of that on bills because that means that we will be getting the best possible outcome on any legislation that we see. So I would be hoping to have good discussion and debate that can be leading us to those places that we can pass good legislation by taking a step back, listening to both sides, and ultimately knowing that in ASCSU we have a goal that is to serve the students of Colorado State University, and being able to step back and see that goal so that we can best fulfill that duty is kind of how I would help to lead the Senate to that.
Thank you, Mr. Taylor.
It's noted that the Student Fee Review Board is responsible for allocating nearly $57 million a year across many different outlets. As Speaker, you will be a part of this board, so how do you feel your presence and opinion can make a difference, and how do you plan on holding them accountable? Mr. Montanti?
In the past, I have attended at least one student fee review board as just a watcher, standard sitting by. So I have seen how they typically operate, as well as in that case of being a voice, I'd probably be more on the impartial side, realizing that there are students within all the communities, and I'd have to best represent that. And if need be, stepping in when it comes to that, I'd have to make sure that I'd be making sure that the voice is heard, that I'm making sure that all the concerns are addressed before we think about any budget reallocation, allocation, all that lovely money stuff.
Thank you. Mr. Taylor, you have the floor.
I'd like to think of myself as somebody who can be impartial. I'm definitely somebody who likes to listen to all sides of a debate and then come to a decision and not come into it with a decision. So being able to get students involved and know what students want with that and be able to listen to all sides of that to come to the best conclusion possible is the best thing that I could do with that.
Thank you very much.
Moving back to one of the targeted questions to Mr. Taylor. You said keeping in touch with the student body is one of your goals as Speaker. How do you plan on reaching the student body?
Well, one of the things that I mentioned is social media. Social media is the best way to connect with people this age, and I think that we all know that. So the fact that the Senate's social media page has been inactive for quite a while, I think is disappointing, and that's a failing on our part to students. So I think that being able to get that up and going again, to have students be able to see what we do, and then be able to go to clubs and student organizations and classes and get people involved and coming to talk to us about what they want to see is what I can do in that position.
Thank you. Mr. Montanti has requested a rebuttal. You have 30 seconds.
I feel like both reactivating the social media would also be a very good idea, as well as being there in person. I feel like that's the most key element, because so far, Senate feels like a very ethereal, detached entity in and of itself. And I feel like showing that we are here, we are physically here, and that you can reach out to us is a stronger avenue as well.
Thank you, Mr. Montanti.
This question is targeted at Mr. Montanti. So how will you work with senators of different colleges to ensure that those students are being represented? You have the floor.
I'd work with the senators of different colleges by making sure that I'm reaching out to said colleges first, and also inviting them to have discussion, being open to go to said college councils as well, being able to basically be there, listen to their concerns, listen to the students on the college council, listening to the senators of the college council, generally listening, making sure that I have their input and their information before I make any decisions.
Thank you very much.
Returning to the general questions directed at both of you, what is the purpose of your position, and why did you choose to run for office? Mr. Montanti.
The reason why I chose to run for office is to make sure that Senate is both accurately representing and representing and fairly representing all of the students within the CSU, as well as making sure that students feel comfortable within that space, because it is a very daunting space, and I feel like it would be a lot easier to have student engagement and have their voices be able to be heard if they felt a lot more comfortable within that space in of itself. Activacy is a large thing to ask of a person, and sometimes it's a lot harder if you don't feel fully comfortable.
Thank you, Mr. Montanti. Mr. Taylor.
Can I get that question again?
Yes. What is the purpose of your position, and why did you choose to run for office?
Thank you. I chose to do this because I'm passionate, like I said, about ASCSU and about CSU. So I'm passionate about advocacy. I know that it costs too much to go to CSU, and I want to help to be a change in that. I know people who don't come to CSU now because it costs too much, and I know people who have had a lot of difficulties finding housing because it costs too much. ASCSU is also an intimidating space. I know that, and I know a lot of people who have come to me and asked me to do things because they don't feel comfortable coming to speak to us. So getting students involved and making that space a welcoming space that students can come and voice issues that they have is what I would hope to do with that.
Thank you, Mr. Taylor.
Moving on to the next question. As the Speaker of the Senate, you will be tasked with appointing the ASCSU Senate leadership. What makes an effective Senate leadership team, and how will you choose members that will not only fulfill their roles in the Senate, but represent the goals and needs of the student body as a whole? Mr. Montanti, you have the floor.
I think the most important thing about a Senate leadership team is a leadership team that wants both the best for the organization, as well as are not afraid to speak out against me. If I make a mistake, I would love to, if my leadership would be willing to be like, hey, you made this mistake, can you please fix that? Because I know I'm not a perfect person, and I know that in my process, I want to choose people who not only have a diverse breadth of experiences, but also are more than willing to speak out and even correct me if need be.
Thank you very much. Mr. Taylor?
It's about getting people of all viewpoints and all voices to come to the table. That's ultimately what the Senate is about. That's why we have college councils and SDPS offices, is to get people involved. And so that's what I would hope out of any leadership team that we have.
Thank you very much.
All right. Now, moving on, how can you, as a Speaker of the Senate, reach out and hear from the voices that can sometimes feel disconnected from ASCSU? Mr. Montanti, you have the floor.
I think the best way for me to reach out as Speaker of the Senate would be just to go to events, talk to people, be like, hey, did you know XYZ? And be like, what's your thoughts? What's your opinions? Start that discussion and conversation. Meet them where they're at and talk to them, and slowly build up to things that they might want to do. Make a relationship, basically.
Thank you, Mr. Montanti. Mr. Taylor, you have the floor.
It's about getting people involved. It's about meeting students wherever they are, and it's about getting people involved on social media too. So even if they don't want to come and speak to us, they know at least what's going on, because a lot of people don't. Even people who I'm close with don't know what we do in ASCSU, and I think that's an issue also. And ultimately, it's about listening to students and being able to sit down and not speak and just listen to what people need and be able to then do that and put that into action.
Thank you, Mr. Taylor.
Moving on, what is your organizational or leadership style? Mr. Montanti, you may begin.
To anyone who's been to committee, generally how I have run my committee of DEI, it's been pretty lax. It's been very fair. It's a very open talking sort of situation. And there have been cases where I've had to, be like, hey, calm down, let's keep this germane. So for most people, they would probably describe my leadership style as very lax or pass or go. I hope to definitely work on that more so people can be like, oh, he's a leader, but there are boundaries and you should not cross those boundaries.
Thank you very much. Mr. Taylor?
Can I get that question again, please?
What is your organizational or leadership style?
Thank you. I like to just let things happen as they come. I think that's the best way to let anything happen, honestly, is just letting it happen and dealing with it as things come up. When we let people have good discussions and debates about policies, we get the best possible policies. So getting people involved and then having those discussions and listening to all sides of that is what the Senate should be doing, and that's what I would hope to lead us to a point of doing that.
Thank you.
Returning again to the candidate-specific questions, this one is directed at you, Mr. Taylor. You said that one of the reasons you would be good in this position is because you are a peacemaker during outbursts. Can you explain a time during your ASCSU experience where you distributed peacekeeping abilities?
Yeah, most of that is just behind the scenes and talking to people. When we have little breaks in the Senate, and when Senate finishes and I get to stay and talk with folks about how they feel about things and be able to listen to all sides of that and then tell people who might not have those same views why people think what they think, and be able to get us to a point of having mutual understanding and being on the same page. And that's, I think I can do a good job of that as speaker too, is just getting people to have calm discussions and get to the ultimately the same page.
Thank you, Mr. Taylor.
As a gentle reminder for both candidates, please speak a little bit closer to your mic so we can hear your voice better. Now, on the question for Mr. Montanti, how will your personal relationships within the ASCSU Senate assist you in creating a safe space?
I believe my personal relationships within that organization would be, in order to make it a safer place, would be talking to the people who are like, hey, I don't feel comfortable within that space, or it's never been like my type of vibe. I think it would be talking about where those issues or fears and pains come from. Like, I know for a fact some of my coworkers are like, oh, Godspeed, Enoch, you have Senate tonight. And I'm like, yeah, no, but also, you're free to come. I promise we don't bite.
Thank you very much.
All right, back to the general questions. How do you amplify the student voice as Speaker of the Senate? Mr. Montanti?
I think I amplify it by making sure those concerns are addressed that they have, making sure that if they have come to me with a concern, I'm speaking on that concern. I'm making sure that if there's something that they want addressed, that we are going to address it as soon as possible. I'm making sure that their voice is being heard, listened to, and being amplified and told to the greater Senate body.
Thank you, Mr. Montanti. Mr. Taylor, you have the floor.
Well, the speaker obviously is somebody who should be impartial when discussions and debates happen. So behind the scenes, it's about having discussions with students and finding out what they need and what they want out of us. Something I've done that this year with just talking to students, and one of the biggest issues that people typically mention is the cost of housing on campus and off campus. And I had a bill in the Senate to make a housing caucus that passed unanimously. And now we have some communication with students and housing to look at some of those issues that people see. And so it's about being able to connect with students and then take action on that. And that's something that I have done and I plan to continue to do.
Thank you, Mr. Taylor.
Moving on, what does an efficient and effective Senate look like to you? Mr. Montanti, you may begin.
I believe an efficient and effective Senate is a place where before we start, people are talking with each other. They're intermingling. We have a full gallery. Some people are talking with their senators, and senators are talking to people who might not represent, but they still interact with and hear those concerns. And I feel like when Senate is in session, it looks like a very orderly, very processed conversation about, well, do we want this bill to pass? What about this Lex? Are we making sure that these concerns are being addressed? That's what my vision of an orderly, effective Senate looks like.
Thank you very much. Mr. Taylor?
In the Senate, we have a funny way of kind of falling into some of these petty political fights that don't get stuff done. The job is about getting stuff done. That's why we all come to Senate. I think that discussion and debate is a good thing, but we have to avoid the petty politics of it all and be able to focus ourselves on a goal of making this campus a place that people can enjoy. And that's what we do, and that's how we can be getting stuff done. That's how I would define that.
Thank you.
Moving on, how do you plan on leading such a large and diverse group of senators each week? Mr. Montanti, you have the floor.
I plan to lead how I've been leading, but also improving upon my weaker areas. I understand that my own weaknesses can be an issue, But with leading this large, diverse breadth of group, I plan to lead them with the best of my capabilities, making sure that their voices are heard, their colleges are being heard, their SDPS offices are being heard, and that when they are being heard, that they are getting their time to speak, that there's no needless interruption, and that conversation remains germane. No one's attacking anyone, and that everyone is instead having discussion.
Thank you, Mr. Montanti. Mr. Taylor, you have the floor.
Can I get that question one more time? Thank
Of course. How do you plan on leading such a large and diverse group of senators each week?
Well, okay, hold on, let me take a step back. I've been involved in the Senate now for 2 years, so I kind of know how that space functions and how we like to do things. And I'm the chair of the Internal Affairs Committee, and so each Monday I lead that, and that's kind of like a mini session of Senate, and so I think that's given me a lot of the knowledge I need to know about how to lead that space and how to deal with maybe issues as they come up.
Thank you, Mr. Taylor.
We will now like to open the room to audience questions. If you have a question for either one or both of the speakers, please specify which, and please raise your hand. Yes, sir? You can speak. I can reinstate the question. Mr. Montanti, you have the floor. If you would like me to repeat the question, I can.
Yeah, could you repeat the question?
How will you make ASCSU less intimidating for those who are not within the sphere of ASCSU?
I think first it starts with making the space more amicable, polite, not kinder. I think that's the major thing to deal with first, and then after that, reaching out and inviting students, making sure they're feeling comfortable, inviting them at their own pace, giving them access to see what things we might talk about, maybe even talk about the things we might talk about in that Senate space a little bit more, so they have the context on what they would be stepping into, as well as talking about the Senate space as how it actually is. As for helping students up into leadership positions, I think like showing them how a Senate session runs, how that goes, explaining the motions, explaining how the votes work, just generally explaining to help them get a better understanding and grasp of how our system works.
Thank you very much, Mr. Taylor.
That space is intimidating. I'm not going to lie to you about that. Anybody who's gone down and taken a look at the Senate chambers knows that that's an intimidating space. So getting people to come and maybe watch a Senate session, I've done that a handful of times, of having people come and just check that out a little bit and get to know what we do in the Senate and get a little bit of knowledge about that space before getting involved in that. And I'm also somebody who's knowledgeable about how Senate does things, about the bylaws and the Constitution, and that's something that would be advantageous in a position like that.
Thank you very much.
Are there any further questions from the audience? It's you. In the black jacket.
We have a mic coming to you
Yes.
as well.
Hi. What are some of your favorite moments from Senate, and how do you plan to create that again, if elected Speaker?
Mr. Montanti, you have the floor.
Well, I'd have to say that 4-branch competition has a small place in my heart. I absolutely loved winning that tower building. So I think talking to the other leaders about maybe doing more of those types of events within the office, maybe making that a little bit more open for students to see and watch, to see if they want to root for anyone. That would probably be my most favorite moment that I can think of.
Mr. Taylor?
When we passed the Housing Caucus bill, that's something that I had focused on for quite a while. It's something I'd had a lot of communication with students about, and so finally getting that passed was a big moment, and that's one of the biggest changes I think that we've seen in the Senate, is just having a lot of communication with students in doing that, and so being able to get that passed and have a new beginning with a lot of communication with students. We've had a lot of students come into that caucus, which is good to see, so that's definitely my favorite moment with that, and I would love to continue getting students involved with that. I would love to have people come and check out meetings and have people give feedback on what they think we should be doing, because that's what the job is all about.
Thank you, Mr. Taylor. Are there any further questions from the audience? Yes, right over there. Keep your hand up, please, so that they can find you easily.
This is a question for Chair Taylor. You mentioned how important it is to have discussion and debate, but then later you stated that we have to be efficient. Can you speak a little bit more to your values about having civil discourse, even if it doesn't result in a policy outcome?
Well, no outcome is an outcome too. We've had a lot of bills that we've failed in the past, and that's fine too, because that's ultimately a bill that is not that is deemed not good enough to be passed and to be put into action. So it's about having discussions about what the best way to go about doing something is, and if ultimately that decision is doing nothing, then that's a decision too. Does that answer that question?
Thank you, Mr. Taylor.
Moving on, does anyone else have any questions? You in the jersey, back row.
This is a question for both of you. How would you plan for making sure that all students are represented, even the students with disability on campus here at CSU?
Mr. Montanti, you have the floor.
Making sure those positions are filled to start, and then inviting those students to the said Senate space. Making sure that the students themselves are seeing just how their senators are voting, and making sure that they have their voice being heard within the space. Making sure that the students have that opportunity to be there within the space, to hear the legislation, to see if it passes or fails, to see just what goes down.
Thank you very much. Mr. Taylor?
Having communication with the SDC is one of the biggest things I can think of, and being able to get people involved in that and be able to communicate what they need. I'm also quite happy to announce that I have the endorsement of CSU's Disability Club, because they know that I can be doing that advocacy as well.
Thank you very much.
Do we have any further questions from the audience? Yes, right over there in the back.
This question is for both of you. Do either of you have a plan or ambition to unite the three branches of ASCSU? And if so, how would you encourage collaboration?
Mr. Montanti, you have the floor.
I plan to reach out to the branch leaders, talk to them, figure out what best ways that we can get more interbranch mingling, talking, and discussing. I know that's something that ASCSU's Cultural Review Board has been talking about, that I have been on for a bit, and we've definitely talked about how can we get more interbranch communication, making sure that the branch leaders are also reaching out to the people who they lead, and making sure that they have access to reach out to the other individuals within other branches.
Thank you, Mr. Montanti. Mr. Taylor, you have the floor.
I think just getting people to communicate is the best thing that we can do with that. We've had a couple of small things that all people in ASCSU come together at the same time to do, and I love seeing that. It's a good time to meet people that you don't typically, see every day, because I don't see people in the courts every day. I don't see people in exec every day, but I do see people in Senate quite a bit. And it's a shame. We should be having that communication, and that's official business and not. We can do things with people in ASCSU when it's not official ASCSU duty, just to build those connections, and that's I think the best thing we can do.
Thank you, Mr. Taylor.
Any further audience questions? You in the front row.
Please keep your hand raised so they can find you.
I have a question for both of you. The concept of adopting and therefore fostering a kinder Senate space is obviously very amazing in concept, but I was wondering what foreseeable actionable steps do you think could exist in terms of actually fostering that kinder space?
Thank you very much. Mr. Montanti, you may begin.
Making sure our conversation remains germane, making sure that we're mindful of both of how we're speaking and exactly not disregarding any experiences that we might not be immediately thinking of, making sure that we're checking in on each other most of all. Like, sometimes it can be hard, and it's hard to be in that space sometimes, and sometimes you just need someone to who can check in on you, see how you're doing.
Thank you very much. Mr. Taylor?
Well, the Senate is a deliberative body. We debate big issues, and that's not always easy. So it's about being able to disagree better, like we've had some discussions about in the past. And also just acknowledging that disagreeing with somebody on policy does not mean that you dislike them as a person and as a human, because it obviously doesn't mean that. So that's something that I've done a good job of. I disagree with people in that space quite a bit, but we still communicate and we can still talk and have calm and civil discussions. And the bottom line with that is just communication.
Thank you very much.
We'll have one more audience question if, yeah, right back. Sorry, right there. You have yet to ask a question right here. Could you please keep your hand up? Did you ask it? Sorry. Back there in the corner.
Thank you. As Speaker, one of the primary roles is to be the head of the Legislative Cabinet. How would you guys ensure that members of Legislative Cabinet are doing their job and being held accountable?
Mr. Montanti, you have the floor.
Well, for one, I'd definitely be keeping up with making sure to check in on your office hours. Y'all got office hours, I'll be checking them if I am elected speaker, and making sure that your constituents are represented. I'll be probably going around campus talking to the students, so I'll be talking to your constituents and asking their opinions and thoughts on this, and confirming it with y'all, talking to y'all about what they've heard, and seeing where there might be any dissonance or seeing where there are similarities about what your constituents have been saying.
Thank you, Mr. Montanti. Mr. Taylor, you have the floor.
I just want to say what a good question. That's something that we've maybe had some issues with in the past, but it's about communication. And ultimately, like I said, all of us in the Senate get involved because we feel passionately about something. So being able to find ways to channel those passions and be able to get involved in a way that people feel they should be getting involved and feel that they can be making a difference on campus and in ASCSU. And so I can be flexible with people in how they go about that.
Thank you, Mr. Taylor.
That will wrap up our time for questions. We will now provide each of you 1 minute to provide any closing remarks for your voters. Mr. Montanti, your closing statement.
I'm so glad to see all of y'all out here, whether it's in person or digital. I hope that on April 1st through 3rd that you vote. I don't care how you vote, just as long as you vote. Because remember, your voice might be one droplet, but it can cause a ripple in a sea of thousands that can create a massive tsunami.
Thank you very much, Mr. Taylor.
I just want to say thank you all for coming out to watch this debate tonight. That's a huge step in getting involved in campus, so I definitely love to see that. My campaign is focused, like I said, on advocacy and on getting involved. And that's something that I've done in the past and I will continue to do if I'm elected to this position. This is something that I feel passionately about. Obviously, I mean, I lost the last election and now I'm coming back to do this again because I do feel passionately about this. And so I would love to be able to have an opportunity to be the next Speaker of the Senate. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Taylor.
Thank you both. This concludes the 2024 ASCSU Speaker of the Senate debate.
Voting is available for students on RamWeb from April 1st through the 3rd.
Stick around because after this short intermission, we will be back for the presidential and vice presidential debates. My name is Tate Paisley.
And I'm Bailey Burkowski with CTV Channel 11. We'll be right back.
it will finish the current academic year at Pooter and plans to transfer to the United Arab Emirates over the summer. And that brings us to the end of our news brief for you all.
Thank you for joining us, but stay tuned. The ASCSU presidential debates will begin momentarily.
How's it going, y'all? We're CTV. We're a student-run TV station that helps inform the CSU community here in Fort Collins and on campus. As you can see, we've got a lot going on.
We feature award-winning shows that go live at 7 p.m. on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday nights, featuring sports, news, entertainment, and so much more. And that's really just scratching the surface.
Now down here is where the magic happens. As the only broadcast news station in Northern Colorado, our anchors and our multimedia journalists have a passion for reporting on local topics in the city that we call home.
How's it going, Ram fans? Welcome back to CTV Sports.
Thanks, Madeline. If you prefer exciting content over bland news, sports is for you. We've got reporting, video production, and so much more, with a focus, of course, in local athletics. We're the definition of entertainment. And speaking of entertainment,
this is where the real fun happens. In the entertainment department at CTV, there are a variety of shows to choose from. You could host your own game show, hone your inner Gordon Ramsay with CTV Cooks, rock out with local musicians on local beats, or get all your nerd news from CTV Geeks.
y'all quit being so geeky.
The possibilities are endless.
And if you're more into being behind the camera, then Studio Crew might be for you. You can learn how to man cameras, run a switchboard, or even direct your own show.
I swear, if this broadcaster breaks one more time, I'm gonna lose my flippin' mind!
And well, that's what CTV has to offer. Check the link in the bio to find out more.
Go Rams!
Good evening, Rams.
The ASCSU debates will return in just a moment, but for now, we bring you a brief news report for the week.
I'm Gabrielle Hibbets.
And I'm Chigozia Ozor.
A 37-year-old Evans man has been arrested in connection to the October overdose of a man in Lyons. ASCSU investigators, Lyons Fire Department, and Thompson Valley EMS responded to the home where they found the man dead, with evidence of illegal narcotics used at the scene. Investigators began working to determine who supplied the lethal drugs, eventually identifying the Evans man as the primary suspect. The man was booked into the Weld County Jail with multiple Class 1 drug felonies.
Last Tuesday, the Pueblo Police Department arrested 31-year-old Adrian Pacheco on suspicion of first-degree murder in a shooting that happened earlier this month. The shooting, which occurred on the 700 block of Mangold Lane, left 24-year-old Andre Salas of Fort Collins dead at the scene. Police have suggested the shooting was the result of a gang conflict, though they have provided little details on the matter. A judge issued a $10,000 cash-only bond for Pacheco, though a court appearance has yet to be scheduled in this homicide case. Now, with changes to Fort Collins U+2 law in effect, one question remains: how is the community reacting?
We'll now turn to our reporter Michael Rosales with more. Michael?
Thanks, guys. My name is Michael Rosales, and I'm here on the LSC Plaza, here to ask some students their thoughts and opinions on U+2 and the potential bill that could abolish it in the future. What are your guys' thoughts and opinions on U+2 potentially being abolished here in Fort Collins?
We're super excited to have it abolished because we don't like that rule that much. And we know some people personally who are affected by it currently, and it's a really unfortunate situation, so we're definitely for it getting abolished. Yeah.
Because the U+2 feel like kind of restricts some of the, like a lot of the things that you're allowed to do as far as living goes post your freshman year. So yeah, I think it just provides a little more opportunity.
I personally just got an apartment and signed a lease, and it was so difficult to find an actual place to live that was affordable, and it still is only $25 cheaper than my rent right now, and I'm living with 3 people as opposed to 2 people right now, so it just doesn't really make sense to me.
Have you or anyone you know been affected or had trouble finding affordable housing due to the restrictions here in Fort Collins?
My boyfriend, they live with 4 people in a house, and just recently they all were on the lease, and just recently found out that they couldn't all live there anymore and had to relocate within a certain amount of time.
I know that I have a couple of friends who have been forced to kind of cut down their roommates, even though they wanted to live with, more people. They've had to kind of pick and choose who they live with.
My last question for you is if you could say anything to the lawmakers before they vote on the bill, what would you say to them?
I'm broke, and I would really like this not to be a thing.
Consider college students' needs and affordability needs for people our age.
After talking to students today, it's clear that the passing of this bill will be a game changer for CSU and the Fort Collins community. This is Michael Rosales reporting from CTV Channel 11. Thank you.
Thanks, Michael. In other news, for the first time in 15 years, Rail Jam was held at CSU's Laurie Student Center this past Thursday. Almost 2,000 spectators gathered to enjoy music, chat amongst their friends, and watch their peers shred the slopes. The $27,000 event with 30 men and 8 women competitors took nearly a year of planning before the event was held. With a DJ, several food trucks, and multiple merchandise vendors, Rail Jam celebrated Colorado culture and was a source of excitement for community members.
In the upcoming semesters, CSU will be launching 7 new first-year study abroad locations. For the fall semester of 2024, these locations will include Spain, Ireland, Japan, Denmark, Croatia, Australia, Germany, and London. Each of these programs will provide participating students with 3 AUCC credits. Beyond class credit, these programs are designed to help new students build community and confidence before entering the CSU environment.
Activism theater may not have been a form of performing arts you've heard about, but that is about to change. The Black women-led theatrical dance company and social activism ensemble Urban Bush Women has kicked off their 40th anniversary celebration. In honor of their 4 decades worth of award-winning performances, this team presents their legacy plus lineage plus liberation tour, which is making its way to Fort Collins. Any community member interested in witnessing this performance is invited to the Lincoln Center Performance Hall on Tuesday, April 9th, starting at 7:30 in the evening.
The Fort Collins community continues to grow and innovate, even across the world. Former Poudre School District Principal Kathy McKay is taking her education leadership to a new level by becoming the principal of the American Community School in Abu Dhabi. McKay will finish the current academic year at Poudre and plans to transfer to the United Arab Emirates over the summer. And that brings us to the end of our news brief for you all.
Thank you for joining us, but stay tuned. The ASCSU presidential debates will begin momentarily.
Good evening and welcome to the 2024 ASCSU Presidential and Vice Presidential Debate, live from the University Ballroom. I'm JJ McKinney.
And I'm Kate Sherman, 2 of your chief ankles for CTV Channel 11. The Associated Students of Colorado State University control millions of dollars of your student fees and have a large impact on the university as a whole.
And tonight is the night where the CSU student body can see how these candidates feel on issues such as housing initiatives, free speech on campus, student representation, and much more. Voting is available on RamWeb from April 1st to the 3rd.
Some general rules of the debate will be You will be allocated 1 minute for opening statements. You will have 45 seconds to answer general questions, 30 seconds for rebuttal, which you may request by raising your hand, and another minute for your candidate-specific questions.
Viewers may submit comments and questions in the YouTube live stream that will be asked after our intermission. Please make sure and make it clear in your question which candidate or candidates the question is directed to.
CTV and Rocky Mountain Student Media Corporation do not endorse any specific campaign, but seeks to provide fair and equal coverage of all of the candidates.
Tonight, we have 3 campaigns running against each other for president and vice president. Now, let's meet our candidates.
Introducing presidential candidate Claudia Paraiso and vice presidential candidate Ayala. Paraiso serves as the Speaker pro tempore, and Ayala is the current Speaker of the Senate within ASCSU.
Seeking re-election is current President Nicholas DeSalvo with his new running mate, Braxton Dietz. Dietz serves on the Student Fee Review Board and is Chief of Staff within the Office of the President.
Last but not least, the presidential candidate Jorji Whyte and vice presidential candidate Leticia Madrigal-Tapia. Whyte, the Director of Health within the ASCSU, and Madrigal-Tapia serves as the Director of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion.
And that's Georgia Wright and
There we go.
Leticia Madrigal-Tapia.
Thank you.
Now that we have met our candidates, we will start with opening statements. We'll go left to right, starting, that should be switched. We'll go right to left, starting with Paraiso and Ayala, and a friendly reminder that 1 minute is allotted for opening statements. Paraiso and Ayala, you have the floor.
Hello, so again, my name is Claudia Paraiso, running for the presidential candidate. So Ava and I are running on transparency through community and communication. We really want to focus on transparency with student fees along with communication within all the branches because we really want to have genuine collaboration and really build a trust between the student body and the ASCSU student government because we want to be able to have a lot more engagement and involvement, and we want to have representatives from all around campus so that we can bring new job opportunities, resources, internships, and just give the best experience for all the students on the CSU campus.
Another big goal of ours is to make sure that we are completely transparent with the students and how we're spending your money and how your money is allotted to us, as well as getting in talks with the LSC about the catering policies in order to make cultural events here hosted at the LSC a lot more accessible and a lot more inclusive. Thank you.
Now for Whyte and Madrigal.
Hello, beautiful people. My name is Georgia Whyte. I use she, they pronouns, and I want to first thank you all for being here, taking your time and space to be here because this is a really important part of the student process. Leti and I are running because we need a culture shift in the way that we serve students. Our campaign centers affordability, and we know that when we talk about affordability, we have to talk about all of the intersecting issues that center that. We also have to realize that there's root causes that are centered around affordability. And while we recognize that there's root causes and we can be centering around many different issues, we need to be also providing practical and tangible solutions to our students who are facing these issues right now.
Hi all, my name is Leti. We also believe in the collective. We don't believe in power or isolation. And I think one of the most dictating quotes of what we are running on is if you want to go fast, go alone, but if you want to go far, you go together. And we believe in going far and going together.
We can now move on to DeSalvo and Dietz.
Well, thank you everyone for taking time out of your night to come to this event this evening. I'm Nick DeSalvo. I'm the current student body president, and I'm running to be the first two-term student body president in over 30 years. We're running on the issues of affordability, championing some of the work that we've started, the student experience, which Braxton will talk about, and effectiveness. In this role as student body president, it takes about a semester to learn the ropes of how campus works and the broader community. We are endorsed by practically every elected official who controls the levers of power in the city of Fort Collins and Larimer County because they know that we can do this work. If we're more effective as a team, then we could get more done for the students.
Thank you, Nick, and thank you everybody else for coming out today. We know that students can't enjoy college unless they can afford it, and we've been making big moves on that, but we also know that college is a time for folks to come and discover themselves and discover the world outside of their hometown. And we pledge to make CSU a place where students in Colorado, students throughout the nation, and students throughout the world know that they can come here to get the student experience they deserve. This looks like bringing back the big events that used to define CSU and the necessary resources that students need to succeed. And this campaign platform is not a campaign platform because it sounds good. It's because we found that it works this past year, and we intend to continue that good work this next year.
Thank you. All right, now that we have gotten introduction started, we're now going to go into questions for the debate. I'd like to remind each candidate that you have 45 seconds to answer each question before we will and go on to the next question. And you each have the opportunity for a rebuttal. Those rebuttals need to be 30 seconds long. And I'd also like to remind each of you, when answering your questions, to move closer to the mics. That way the entire audience can hear you. All right, now with those rules being stated, the first question goes to everyone. Some students on campus still don't know what ASCSU is and what the function is. How do you plan to make the work done in ASCSU more profound and transparent to the general student body? And we'll start from right to left.
So we know that ASCSU is not well known. So some of the things that Ava and I want to focus on is student outreach. We want to be able to go to all the college councils, to be able to go to all the student orgs, so that we can get feedback on what students want to know from ASCSU, and so we can tell them that we have entities such as DeSalvo and such as SFRB that everyone can serve on, and you can know what goes on with your student fees. You can also create legislation that will be able to help you on the student campus, and you will be able to also think of events. But one of the main things is really just student outreach, so everyone knows what do you want to know and how we can help you with that.
Everyone is a part of a college here on campus, and I know a lot of those colleges send out weekly newsletters and weekly emails about everything you need to know. And so getting in contact with those people, as well as just getting in contact with our media.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, now Whyte and Madrigal.
Believe in the power of authentic connection, and I think that's where it starts. As it exists right now, ASCSU is not an inclusive space. Students don't feel welcome to come into our office. They don't feel welcome to just come in not knowing what ASCSU is, just to see what we're about, and that needs to change. We need to build a community and space that really fosters connection, and this idea that students can come in and should feel welcomed because they're paying us $1 million to exist. I think also that having a background in policy and understanding the way that ASCSU functions isn't enough. We also need to have our pulse on every single area on campus, because if we do that, and as we build connections with registered student organizations, nonprofits, different departments, different academic places on campus, we can foster meaningful and impactful change.
I think we also need the leadership of ASCSU to show up for the community and show up for spaces where we haven't seen them in historically. So when we're
Thank you.
Thank you.
Now for DeSalvo and Dietz.
I'll be honest with all of you. I don't blame the student body for not knowing what ASCSU is or what they do, because for the last 20 years, they've grown accustomed to ASCSU presidents coming into their classrooms, promising to fix U+2 and defaulting entirely on their promise. I made that promise last year when I campaigned for student body president. I followed through on it. U+2 will no longer be an issue that afflicts the students here at CSU. I think that's something that needs to be championed. And once students know that ASCSU did that ASCSU helped remove the state tax from textbooks, saving $2 million every single year, they're going to know what ASCSU is. And they're going to want to be a part of the team because we're doing impactful work.
Exactly, and I would add on, this campaign has been focused on meeting students where they are. That's why we're happy to say that just a few hours ago, we gained the overwhelming support of the largest registered student organization on CSU's campus. We've been going out into the communities, meeting students where they are, and understanding the issues that involve them.
Our second question is, why do you think that you are the best candidate for the position, and why should the student body trust you to lead them? And we're going to start right to left again.
So I believe I'm the best candidate for this position because I have been very much involved in on the CSU campus a lot. I serve in different positions, that is in the rec center, such as in the SDPS offices and in ASCSU as well. And I feel that as someone who is a part of a minority group, I will be able to bring a fresh new perspective into ASCSU, into this president position, and I can bring opportunities to all students as well, and just bring a new ideas and have a fresh start that will be able to grow this community, and we'll be able to spread all those ideas and continue that for years to come.
All right, moving to Whyte and Madrigal.
Perfect. So I talked a lot about needing to be connected with different areas on campus and having a pulse on every single part of campus in CSU. Leti and I already bring that to the table. We have student on-campus jobs. We also work closely with Student Affairs and Higher Education Department on campus and within the Laurie Student Center. And we know what student orgs need. That's something that is really awesome about my position within the Student Leadership Involvement and Community Engagement Office, is that I have consistent contact with these student orgs. And so I see what they're facing and areas where we need to be stepping up and showing up for them. I think also that when we talk about qualifications and what makes us unique, we have the passion and drive. We believe strongly, like I've said, in the power of authentic connection and relationship building. And when you pour into others, they want to pour into you. When you give other people the relationships that they need and the authentic connection and just like being there for them, people want to do things for you too, and we get to uplift their personal passion, so that makes it effective.
Thank you. And I saw that you had a rebuttal.
Yeah, this might come as a shock, but I'd actually like to agree with Georgia. If you don't know, both Georgia and Leti work for me. And when I found out that they were going to be running in this election, I said, that's great. A big factor in my hiring process was not the amount of experience you had on campus. It was if you had the passion and the drive to do this job. I think they have passion, drive, and ambition, and so I can't fault them for wanting to seek higher office and come for my job. I think that's a great thing. And in the thematic year of democracy, I think students should have choices for who their president is.
And here's now your chance to respond to the original question.
One of the largest things I hear as student body president from elected leaders and campus administrators is that ASCSU has a very, very high turnover rate. The student body president is typically elected as a junior, serves as a senior, and then leaves. They take all that institutional knowledge with them when they graduate. The benefit of this is that there will be no learning on the job, and we can't afford to have learning on the job. There are some serious issues that are coming down the pike at the state capitol, and we have to be ready and prepared to face those. I am ready and prepared to face those with no learning curve.
Absolutely. And like I mentioned earlier, our focus of affordability, our focus of the student experience, we're focused on these things because we found that they've worked. Like Nick said, we have institutional knowledge that we can apply to these, and we're dedicated to continuing that next year, uplifting BSOF, uplifting student clubs through the funding that they need.
Moving on to the next question. In your own words, how would you describe the responsibilities of being ASCSU president?
So being ASCSU president means that you are student-focused. You want the best for the CSU campus, as well as faculty and for students as well. You want to be able to have everyone grow and be prepared for what comes after university. You want to be able to stand as a role model so that everyone knows that you are doing your job and you are there for them no matter what. And so that is something that I really truly believe is really authentic in the position of ASCSU president, so you can make that connection and you can have students know that you're there for you to do the best.
Now, Madrigal and Whyte.
Can you repeat the question for me?
Yes. In your own words, how would you describe the responsibilities of being ASCSU president?
Yeah. To me, it's about two things. It's about service, and then it's about relationship building. And I think those two things go hand in hand. We can't serve our students adequately if we don't know what they need, so we need to have them in our spaces, that's first. And then second, we need to make sure that we are building relationships and authentic and meaningful relationships. So yes, my opponents can talk about how it takes a semester long to build these relationships, but also we already have some of those relationships built, and that's what makes us effective. And also we know how to build meaningful relationships where people want to pour into us, while also still utilizing those relationships and holding people in positions of power that make decisions about our future accountable. So having that dynamic and reflexive conversation point, I think, is really important.
Moving on to Dietz and DeSalvo.
I take a slightly different approach to this question. Wherever I go, in public or private, I feel the weight of 33,000 students on my shoulders at any time. You are a public figure as student body president, and you reflect not only yourself, but the institution. That's powerful. And so whatever meeting I step into, whether that is in President Parsons' office to meet with her about campus issues, or if I'm stepping into the halls of the state legislature, I feel the weight of the students I represent, because they're important, and they're not just numbers. They're people, and they matter. And so you have to represent them with fervor, and you have to show up every single day with the intent of giving your all, 100%, because the students deserve it. When you're honored enough to sit in this position, the students deserve your best every single day, and that's what I've given. That's what I'll commit to continue giving if I'm reelected.
Great. And moving on to the next question. What makes an effective cabinet, and how will you choose your cabinet members that will not only fulfill their roles in the executive branch, but represent the goals and the needs of the student body as a whole? And we're starting right to left again.
So a diverse cabinet means that you have anyone and everyone in your cabinet. So we want to have representation from all around campus, as I said before, which is from different student orgs, different clubs, and you want to be able to have someone who is really passionate and ambitious about their goals and really have passion about their project as well. You want someone who can collaborate with others and who can also take accountability for everything that they do. And so they want to push for a better atmosphere and to be a lot more welcoming and know that they want to get engaged with students. And so you want representatives that will show all of those key characteristics and to have experience in everything that they do, and they're a very well-rounded candidate.
To have an effective cabinet means to put away our biases and hire the people who are best for those positions and have the most knowledge and experience in those positions in order to have a full-rounded cabinet that can support those 33,000 students.
We're going to move on to Whyte and Madrigal.
Can you repeat the question for me, please?
Yes, of course. It was, what makes an effective cabinet, and how will you choose your cabinet members that will not only fulfill their roles in the executive branch, but represent the goals and the needs of the student body as a whole?
Yeah, I think an effective cabinet is a representative cabinet. It means that everybody has their voices heard, but it also means that all identities, all different perspectives are also allowed into that space. It means that whether you're a STEM major or you're a political science major, you're involved in ASCSU and what you want to do with that vision and the passion. But then that also means that all identities are also heard, right? It means that the back office has people in there. It means that the APAC office feels represented by us and by the work that we do. And it also means that community members come and feel comfortable to talk to the cabinet members and address the issues that they feel really strongly about.
I think also when we think about an effective cabinet, we need to think about the team that they lead, because all of these different cabinet members lead a department, and they have people who they're under. So something that we've tried, Leticia and I have both really tried to do with our positions, is create and really expand interns, because a lot of the times it's really intimidating to come into this space, and you feel like you have to have all of these leadership qualifications.
We're going to have to move on to DeSalvo and Dietz.
I'm the only candidate on this stage right now that has actually hired a cabinet. I made the dedication last year when I ran with Vice President Silverhart that we would hire a cabinet that was reflective of the CSU student body. We've done that beyond. Almost half of my cabinet is made up of people of color. My cabinet is majority women. I think it's important to have that representation in your student government, because if my cabinet looks like a frat photo from the 1970s, that's not reflective of the entire swath of the CSU student body. My lived experience was different. I grew up in a very, very diverse area, and that made me better. It makes all of us better, and it makes the campus better when you have a team made up of people from all different backgrounds.
Absolutely, and I have good news for the voters. I've already managed a cabinet throughout this past year. Serving as chief of staff, I understand the intricacies of every single position.
Thank you.
I understand what goes into every single position.
And I see a rebuttal from Whyte.
Awesome. I think we need to be really careful when we talk about being the only person to do something. And I think we also need to think about diversity, equity, and inclusion. Because we can say that we have a diverse cabinet, but does that mean that every single cabinet member feels included in every single process that's happening in ASCSU? No. And so we need to make sure that we're centering inclusion and equity work just as we're centering diversity, because we can't have one without the other. I also want to talk about, as we say that we're the only one to do something, we need to talk about power hoarding, and we need to talk about gatekeeping to adequate resources to feel empowered in your position. We need to be making sure that everybody in it, thank you.
All right, our next question is, what do you think are some of the most pressing issues for CSU and the student body as a whole? And this time, we'll start from left to right with DeSalvo and Dietz.
Well, I appreciate the other candidates' platforms. They are centered around affordability as well. I think that's great that they're hopping on the bandwagon, but I've worked on these affordability issues for the last 2 years. That is the #1 concern I hear from students whenever I talk to them, whether it's the cost of living or the ballooning cost of tuition. We have to find solutions so that we aren't kicking out our most vulnerable communities from being able to attend CSU. A quality education, a land-grant university education, should be for everyone, but it is becoming increasingly inaccessible because of the cost. To me, that's unacceptable, and that's why it has been the bedrock of my administration to work on issues of affordable housing, tuition generally. That's why we've been at the state capitol so much, more than probably any other presidential administration in the past. And so this affordability work is streamlined, 100% what we have to focus on.
We're going to have to move on to the next group, Madrigal and Whyte. Floor is yours.
Can you repeat the question for us?
Of course. What do you think are some of the most pressing issues for CSU and the student body as a whole?
Okay, yes, we want to talk about affordability. And we want to talk about affordability on a ton of different levels, not just in the realm of policy. We want to talk about tangible solutions that we can be providing students with. So we already have so many programs and resources here on campus that are here to help students who are facing food insecurity, who are facing housing insecurity. When we talk about affordability, we also have to mention that 1 in 3 students here are food insecure, and 1 in 2, 50% are housing insecure. That means that 50% of our students at some point during their career at CSU will either not know where they're living or actively do not have housing. So when we talk about affordability, we also have to look at root issues and center policy, but also tangible and practical solutions.
I mentioned this in our collegiate interview, but I think it's also unacceptable that some students have to live out of their vehicles to afford an education, and there is tangible steps that we could be taking to address all of those issues. I currently work for Off-Campus Life, where we have students come in almost every week to tell us about how they cannot afford the rising costs, and when you're part of the community, you get it.
Moving on to Ayala.
I think a big thing that faces students is security, kind of like what Georgia and Leti were saying. It's housing, it's food, it's feeling safe on campus. It's really that sense of involved in acceptance. I am an RA here, and I see so many students just hold themselves in the room because they don't feel there's a place for them here on campus. They feel so outside, they feel so alone because they can't find a place that really fits with them. So a big thing, I think, in general is just security. Feeling secure on campus, feeling secure in yourself. Coming to college is where you can really find who you are, find what you want to do, and really take that and, do the rest of your professional career in. So a big thing for us is security.
Another big thing is wanting students to be prepared when they leave college, because we want students to be able to have job opportunities and internships when they leave as well, so that they feel more prepared and they feel that they can gain experience both in college and outside of college, so that they are not just taking, so they can take as much time.
Thank you.
And one last question, which is for only the vice presidential candidates. Is a relationship with Fort Collins City Council important? If so, what would you have that relationship look like? Yeah, we'll start left to right.
Absolutely. Well, I'm proud to say that this campaign is endorsed by a majority of the Fort Collins City Council as well as the Fort Collins mayor. We've already established those connections, we've already established those relations, and we're working on those relations to enact actual policy work. I admire my opponent's fixes to the affordability issue, and I think that they're important. And the DeSalvo Dietz administration will continue those fixes, absolutely. But at the end of the day, these are Band-Aid fixes. We have to address these things at the root of their problem. If we cannot address housing insecurity at the root of their problem with U+2, or we cannot address higher education affordability at the state legislature or with the sales tax on textbooks, then these Band-Aid solutions are going to have to keep ballooning in expense, keep ballooning in those who they serve. So we're committed to addressing them at the root of the problem with the policymakers who can fix it at the root of the problem.
Okay. I would also agree with Braxton. I think absolutely we need to make those connections. The only way that you increase advocacy and you increase the representation of CSU students is to connect with people that have more power than you. We have been saying that since we started our campaign. However, the way that the system is currently set up, when we talk about ASCSU and who holds the power, it's always the president and the vice president that get to make these connections. When you're talking about how you want to represent students with marginalized identities, and when you're talking about how you want to advocate for affordability, which for the most part, it is usually students with marginalized identities that have issues with affordability, right? That is just statistics, that is just facts. So when you want to talk about creating these relationships, you also have to talk about how you want to hold on to the power so that nobody else also gets to create advocacy. So that is also relates to like cabinet members and Senate as well. If you want to create big change, you have to get more people involved. Only having one connection with one person and only having one president know all of these people, that doesn't benefit everyone.
And I saw a rebuttal from Dietz.
Yeah, absolutely. When we talk about those in power coming into conversations, we brought 120 students into conversations with over 20 legislators, policymakers at the community roundtable. And not only that, I'll pass it off to my running mate to talk.
We had Congressman Ken Buck on campus, and we had the opportunity to have a private meeting with him. We invited the Director of Diversity and Inclusion, Leticia, to that meeting. She refused to come because Ken Buck has a different political ideology than she does. I think that's incredibly unfortunate, because when you're representing 33,000 students, you represent everyone.
And I saw a rebuttal again.
I think, so first let's address the fact that when Nick decided to make my position, he only put diversity and inclusion. He did not think equity was important in that piece. So when you talk about people that have so much power in the political spectrum, and when you talk about people like Ken Buck, who have openly said that they do not believe in women autonomy, then yes, I am absolutely back for that, because guess what? I'm gonna stand on business when I say that people deserve rights and people deserve to stand up.
Thank you. We're now gonna move on and give you an opportunity to answer the original question.
Could you repeat that really quickly?
Yes. The original question was, in a relationship with Fort Collins City Council, or is a relationship with Fort Collins City Council important? If so, what does the relationship look like?
I think a relationship with Fort Collins City Council is important, because no matter what they do, it affects us, because we are in the city of Fort Collins. But having a relationship with them doesn't mean exactly like, oh, we're besties, so I'm gonna agree on with what you say, with what I say. Can you stand up to them when you think something's wrong? Can you stand up to them when a policy is gonna affect students, the majority of students, in a harmful way? Having a relationship with them doesn't have to be all nice and glitters and sparkles. it can be a real conversation. You can sit down and tell them, hey, we don't think this is going to help students. Can we find a way to solve this? Can we find a way around this? It really comes down to, can you speak up to those representatives? Can you speak up to the people in power in order to do the best for students? And I think that is what having a relationship with City Council means.
Moving on, we will now be taking audience questions both from our live on YouTube and from the audience right here. So first, we have a question from our viewers who are watching from home. What have you done to be in touch with student organizations in your positions, and what makes you more qualified to be in touch with student organizations compared to your opponents? And then from right to left.
So we have been in contact with many student organizations, and we have also been talking to many student organizations as well. And on top of that, Ava and I are also involved in different student organizations on campus. So we have been able to reach out to all of these different organizations and speak with them on what they want and what they want to see for next year as well. And so that's something that we see is very important, that you want to be in constant connection with these student organizations, but also reach out to the ones that you have not always been in contact with, so you can create that new just streamline of information, so that you can also see what everyone on campus wants, and that's something that's very important to us.
Hearing throughout this entire campaign and this year about how student orgs have struggled this year to find funding, to find different ways to host their events, is something that me and Claudia have become very passionate about. Just like Claudia said, we're a part of our own student orgs as well, and I watch those struggles every time going to my practice with them. And so student orgs on this campus is something that runs this campus. It makes people feel included, secure. And so we will do everything what we can to serve student orgs and to get information out to student orgs and really do our best to help them in our administration.
Thank you.
I think within my position of diversity, equity, and inclusion, I focused a lot on connecting with student organizations who hold marginalized identities, because that was my job, right? I focused a lot on MGCs, and I also focused a lot on Enock United, who holds one of the most marginalized identities here on campus. So when we talk about connecting with student organizations, we also have to talk about how, yes, they need to get funding because these events matter, but we also need to talk about how we can support those individuals that are part of those organizations as well.
Yeah, something that I've heard a lot through my role in SLICE, the Student Leadership Involvement and Community Engagement Center, through my role in co-curricular leadership specialist, is that so many of these organizations need access to leadership development. They need access to curriculum, and then also they need access to know how to navigate the systems of funding. So many student orgs on campus don't even know that BSOF exists, which ASCSU governs. So Board of Student Organization funding and how we navigate those resources is important.
Well, I've been on BSOF, the Board for Student Organization Funding, for the last 3 years. I'm the only person on the stage who's been on BSOF for at least a year. I think that's important. BSOF is the #1 way that we're able to give back to students with their student fees. And what we've seen this year, more so than I've seen in the last 3 years I've been on the board, is we went through money like crazy. I mean, we have not gone through money so fast. That tells me that student organizations are ready and excited to host as many campus events as possible. And we have a duty as student government to provide funding for those organizations, because largely they don't have the money or the resources to host these big events that are important to campus. So that's where we come in.
Absolutely, and I'll reiterate from what I said before. Just a few hours ago, we gained the overwhelming support of the largest RSO on campus. In addition to that, as Chief of Staff, I hosted an ASCSU Invites event where we brought in student leaders of student clubs and heard from them from the events, the issues that matter to them most.
Our next question is also going to be from our online audience. And it's, how do you plan to support mental health initiatives on campus, and what resources will you allocate to support marginalized students?
So Ava and I have been in talks with Vice President Silverheart to continue the mental health and sexual health awareness initiatives that he started this year because we feel that those are very important. So the blood drives and as well as the wellness machines that may be coming up. We really want to be able to continue those initiatives, and on top of that, we want to be able to work with the health department and the interns that are here already so that we can continue to create new mental health initiatives as well, because we know that that's a very key part for all students on this campus, because mental health is such an important thing that you want to be able to take care of yourself, and that's a strong point for our administration.
Also connecting ourselves with the WGAC. They have so many resources right now in ways that we can help students. And so getting those out more and getting students to use those resources is a big thing for us as well. So not only providing our own resources, but like directing students to resources that we have on campus.
Thank you. DeSalvo, Dietz, so you had a rebuttal?
Yeah, mental health is without a doubt the #1 issue facing our generation. We have to be serious about it. And I would agree with candidates Paraiso and Ayala. I would also like to continue the work of the DeSalvo Silverheart administration for some of these mental health initiatives.
Yep, we can move on to Whyte and Madrigal.
Awesome. I love this question because as Director of Health and Wellness, this year, holistic mental health has been something that has been one of my biggest passions in areas of expertise. In collaboration with Leti, the Director of Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, we have been able to secure an open space in the Laurie Student Center for students to have multicultural counseling drop-in hours. A lot of students don't even know that multicultural counseling even exists, and that's something that the Health Network needs to do better on, and that's also something that we need to do better on in connecting our students to. So that was a really amazing accomplishment that Leti and I were able to make happen within the first semester of our time in ASCSU, and that will be operational by the end of the year. And so we have done things to focus on this already, and we want to continue that work. Holistic mental health and health in general, especially at a primarily white institution, needs to be focused on differently for our students with historically marginalized identities.
DeSalvo, Dietz.
Ditto to a lot of what's been said. One thing that isn't known about the role of ASCSU president is that I'm tasked with the responsibility of writing a letter to families whenever a student passes away. The first letter I had to write this year was during the summer. It was 2 weeks before the freshman year started. An incoming freshman took his own life. And his obituary said that he had dealt with many mental health issues. We have to create a community at CSU where folks know that they can come here and there's a place for them. We have over 400 clubs and organizations of all types, and some catered to marginalized identities too. We have something for everyone here at CSU because we serve folks from everywhere. I think we have to get the message out that CSU has a place for you, and if you're scared or worried about where you'll fit in, don't, because you will. You will find where you belong because we're all Rams, and when we support each other, our campus just improves.
Thank you. And I saw a rebuttal.
Not only does a student death affect themselves, their family, and their friends, but it affects the campus and the community. This year, we also had another student die in the housing. And for all of us RAs who went through training for 2-3 weeks together, that hit us hard. To lose one of our own, it just, it's not something you're going to think about when you're on campus. I opened up a space for other RAs and other people in order to deal with that trauma. I talked about it during Senate. I took my time, my report, to talk about it, to say if you need those resources, please use them. Also about the Palestine-Israel war. If you need those resources, please use them.
Thank you.
For our next question, continued criticism at ASCSU shows evidence of a PR issue. How do you intend to make real substantial changes to improve the internal and external operation of ASCSU? And we'll start again from right to left.
So an important thing So an important thing that we really want to focus on that was actually started this year by Leti and as well as Alex Silverhart is the ASCSU Culture Review Group, because that brings in representatives from legislative, judicial, and executive branch to talk about how we can improve the culture in ASCSU and how we can have a better reflection of that outside to the student body so that they can become more engaged and involved, because we are supposed to be one united strong team, and if that doesn't happen, then how are we supposed to serve the student body? So that is one thing that we really want to focus on and continue within next year.
I'll be the first to say that ASCSU produces excellent work. We do amazing stuff. But in the end, if it doesn't hit our students and it's not hitting the laps of our students, it doesn't matter. We need to make sure that our students know what we're pumping out and they know the initiatives and programs that we're passionate about, because there lies so much passion and so much drive and so much determination in anybody in this organization. We also need to make sure that we're empowering students with the tools and resources to feel comfortable to come into our space. So one, having an open door policy, making it right off the bat from the beginning of the year, knowing as a student that you can come into ASCSU and talk to Leti and I about anything. It doesn't matter if it needs to be an issue that's like you want to have solved, if you need to process through something, or you just want to come see our face, that's important. We also want to institute a policy around having all of our meetings. Thanks.
Well, I think this kind of touches on something I talked about earlier. Of course, ASCSU has a PR issue because historically we haven't really done a whole lot in recent memory for students to point to and say that their student government had an impact. But also, I think it's important when you're student body president, representing 33,000 people who come from all different backgrounds, all different ideologies, all different lived experiences, that you make it known that you are actively representing them. Although I don't know what it's like to live in your shoes or be in your shoes, I know what it's like to be a student. I know what it's like to be a poor student. And focusing on issues that matter to students that are like me and unlike me is the bedrock of how you fix the perception of ASCSU.
External relations to ASCSU.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And another question from our online audience. How do you plan to ensure that students who are interested in ASCSU but don't have experience or ways of getting involved are still able to have their voices heard and get involved?
Say that one more time for me.
How do you plan to ensure that students who are interested in ASCSU but don't have the experience or ways of getting involved are still able to have their voices heard and get involved?
Yeah, I love this question. Being the Speaker of the Senate this year, I've had so many students just come up to me and ask me how they can get involved, how they can use their voice and find things and do things that they think is meaningful. And so people who have no experience but have so much interest, I tell them just to get involved, start somewhere, get your foot in the door. If it's just Senate, being a senator, being an associate, maybe that's your start and you move up. That was my start. If it's joining the executive branch as an intern, that is a start. Just getting your foot in the door is better than watching from the outside. And so I think just making sure that students know there's all those opportunities, there's all those different programs that we have that they can use in order to, get their start is something that we have to prioritize to students. If they don't know, they're not going to do it and they're not going to want to do it.
Think a lot about making sure, what does access mean in our space and what does accessibility mean? Because if we're thinking about who has access to these powers and resources and who feels empowered to come into our space and feels comfortable into our space, that is important. Something that Leti and I really want to institute is making sure that all of our meetings, all of our boards, any kind of council that falls under the ASCSU umbrella, students have that information about what those meetings are, where they're being held, when they can come talk, what room they're in and what time, and also tips for success, because I think that's a really important part. We can't just say, here it is, here's where it is, show up. You also have to feel like you're gonna be successful in that space. So offering students a tip for success around dress code or around how long you'll have to speak in that space, or what might be most impactful to those people at the time. I think is really important.
Thank you.
Yeah, as I was saying earlier, external relations of ASCSU is something that's very important to me. That's why I've ensured this semester ASCSU is out on the plaza tabling every single Wednesday, bringing in engagement and sending out the good work that we're doing. I've also established ASCSU Invites, where we invite in different aspects of our campus to hear from those students to dinner, to hear from the issues that are facing them, and then go back to our cabinet, and put that into actionable change.
Thank you. And I see a rebuttal from Whyte.
Yes, I want to say that I think it's super awesome that we're doing weekly tabling in the plaza. But I also want to say that this is something that Leti and I and our departments have been doing since the beginning of the year. My first project as ASCSU Director of the Health was to do tabling on the plaza and within our office to see what students wanted to see what students needed in terms of their health and wellness. And I think that's important that that's something that we embody in all parts of our lives and have embodied in all parts of our positions here at ASCSU already.
Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. And I think it's great that our cabinet builds upon each other and sees the successes of each other and builds upon that. And that's something that Nick and I are determined to put into our cabinet. We want our cabinet to look like CSU, just like Nick promised with the DeSalvo Silverheart administration. And that means bringing in diverse voices so that we can build upon each other. It's not just us. It's not just our great ideas. It's a teamwork. It's a collaborative work to serve every single one of the 33,000 Rams that come to our school every day.
Thank you. And another rebuttal.
I think in order to bring in those voices, you have to be approachable. You have to be someone that students see and that they can trust. If you are someone they see on a newspaper every other week, that's not going to be the type of person that I'm going to be like, yeah, I'm going to walk up to them and ask them questions. You want to be the type of student that is in your classes, the one that is talking to students, the one that is involved inside of students, inside their orgs, inside their classrooms, inside the LSC, inside wherever they are. And being someone completely involved, just like me and Claudia, are people they come and talk to. Having Senate be...
Thank you.
Yes.
And we are now going to move on to the live audience question part of everything. Wow, that's a lot. I've seen you with your hand up this whole time, so I think we should start there. And if it's okay, if you guys could just switch off between those two mics so that we can also hear the questions from the audience, that'd be great. Yeah, go there, Gabriella.
Hi, I work in RAM events and I do a lot of programming for the Greater University. And so we are also funded by student fees and bringing programming for students by students. And one of the things that came up as a concern to me was we heard that BSOF's budget ended up getting cut in half, I think either this year or last year, and that caused a lot of student orgs not to be able to get funded for the events that they would be able to do. And there was also an event called Rail Jam that was hosted that took a lot out of the budget that caused a lot of orgs to now be on a wait list of how much money is left. I think about $5,000 to split between multiple orgs that have needs and have also done programming in past years and wanting to continue those programs. And so my question is, what was the turnout for Rail Jam? How was that marketed? How much did it cost? And what are you all's solutions now for student orgs who are facing not being able to fund their events this year and plans for next year?
Yeah, we can.
Real quick, I'll address the Rail Jam aspect of that. Rail Jam had a turnout of thousands of students, tens of vendors, and in every...
Excuse me?
We
would like to make sure that all audience members respect the candidates while they're speaking. No more disruptions, please.
In every class that I've talked to, there's at least 5 people who know what Rail Jam is and appreciated us putting it on. I'll give it to Nick to talk about the BSOP aspect.
Yeah, you don't know pain until you've had to cut every single department in your cabinet across the board by 10 to 15%. We just had to make some very, very difficult decisions, and we decreased the amount in BSOP from $150,000 to $125,000. Additionally, we went back afterwards. I fought like hell for it in order to get $30,000 additional dollars for registered student organizations that were on the wait list in BSOF. Funding student orgs is important, and cutting money from BSOF was the last thing I wanted to do. I will ensure this year that that is the last thing we take money from.
I love this question because I think it hits on a few key points of our campaign: accountability and transparency. We need to have students know how much their events are costing, especially when they're paying for them to occur. We also need to make sure that we're letting students into the decision-making process around this. We've heard numbers from 5,000 to 30,000 on this, and that's an issue. We don't even know.
So to answer your question more directly, they said it costed $26,000 to host that event. If only a couple thousand students attended, is that really the best use of the money, especially in the middle of a global warming crisis when we're buying snow, right? Aside from that, Nick literally stated that he wanted the resolution to pass, which, if you guys don't know, Senate passed a resolution to condemn this event, which it did pass, because he wanted Senate to understand how unconnected he was to the student body. Senate was right.
And we have a rebuttal from DeSalvo.
Yeah, I think this shows how connected we actually are to the student body. And we talk about, getting as much bang for your buck in student fees. Rail Jam cost $27,000. We had $10,000 in additional partnerships that came outside of student fees. There was another event, Ryan Salin's event, that cost $12,000, and only 30 people showed up to it. That was an event hosted by candidate Whyte.
I see a rebuttal from Whyte.
Yes, I love that you mentioned Ryan Sounds because I want to talk about this. That's also an event that cost over $10,000 that came partially from ASCSU funding. And I think that this is important because this wasn't just a speaking presentation with 30 students showing up. This also included a CSU Health Network presentation and training that included information around gender-affirming care. This also included a meet and greet with our Pride Resource Center, allowing students to have the experience and conversation to talk with Ryan Salins, and it reached a lot more than 30 students. And when we think about the long-term and sustainable aspect of providing gender-affirming care in CSU Health Network, that's a cost that I'm okay with having. Yeah.
And I'd like to give you a chance to answer the original question. Yes, of course. Or you could try and
it's okay.
Somewhat repeat.
You're okay. I got my notes. Touching on some of the questions that you asked, how much Rail Jam cost? I know I went around to a couple people who were there, and I asked how much they thought it cost, and they said between $7,000 and $15,000. And so when I told them it was a $28,000 event, you should have seen their eyes. You should have seen their faces. They were shocked that something like this was over $20,000, as well as the student wait list. We work at the BAC's office, and all of our student orgs can't get funding. They have events that happen every year in the spring that they can't get funding for anymore because BSOF ran out of funds, because they don't have the funds.
Thank you.
All right, we'll take another question. Right here. Yeah.
Hi, folks. I recently attended the most recent Fort Collins City Council meeting, and despite about 70% of the public comments requesting that the council put through a ceasefire endorsement, they still haven't done so. So I'm interested in asking the incumbent candidates that they have endorsed what the inaction has been with that for y'all, and then for the additional candidates, what vision looks like for that. Thank you.
Okay, so with that, we'll start with the incumbent and then move into the sitting.
This is a topic very near and dear to my heart. If you don't know, over the summer, I was in both Israel and Palestinian territory before the October 7th attacks. The situation for Palestinians is dire. It was dire before October 7th, and it's not going to stop anytime soon. My heart breaks for the Palestinian people. I think we need to be very clear, because this is a moral issue. This is an issue of where our moral compass is. We have to release all hostages and stop all of the firing. It is inexcusable that there are as many people killed in Palestine as there are students that go to CSU. Those numbers to me are staggering. And so what we have to do is bring those issues to the people who can actually affect it. It's not city council. It's our U.S. Congress people. It's Congressman Neguse. It's Senators Bennett and Senator Hickenlooper. We have to put the pressure on them because they're the ones that make that decision ultimately.
About the Palestinian conflict and how many lives it's cost, the amount of destruction that it has caused, and just how heartbreaking it is that that situation is happening, right? And heartbreaking doesn't even cover it, right? It, as a human, that is unfucking believable, and it just makes me cry, right? Me and Sammy, who is the chair of Diversity or Accessibility Caucus, we have put forward a bill in the Senate space to call for a permanent ceasefire. And we've called for many other things, like to stop the anti-Semitism that's happening on campus, as well as xenophobia and Islamophobia that is happening, right? So he can tell you about how we need to go reach higher people with higher power, but he also needs to be doing stuff in level that tells his students that he actually cares about Palestinian students and not just making excuses for it.
Thank you. I'd also like to ask that we refrain from the cursing. We will get in trouble. Okay.
Good point.
To answer your question on our part, I think that just goes back to something I was saying earlier. We have to talk to those representatives. It's not mostly having those relationships, but it's calling them into that conversation, calling them into how this is affecting students and how this is affecting students' lives. Having personal connections between this war, affects not only like the students who are truly affected, who have family there, but the students who are friends with those students, who see them going through this hurt, who see them going through this pain. So no matter what, on all different levels of government, we have to call for a ceasefire. We have to keep doing those things. We have to make sure that our voices are being heard, or nothing's going to get done.
And again, like Leti was saying, the resolution is coming into Senate in this coming week. So we want to be able to have everyone's voices heard, because we also have gallery input where students can come in and voice their opinion on that resolution so they can
Thank
hear.
you. And then DeSalvo with a rebuttal.
Whatever I say is not going to stop Netanyahu from being an awful person. He is a dictator. But what I can do as student body president is show up in community for both the Muslim and Arab American community here on campus and the Jewish community. I've gone to many Jewish events. I went to the iftar earlier, and showing your support, being there for students of different identities, that's the real impact you can make as student body president directly. And I think we have a moral obligation to do that.
I saw a rebuttal first.
Going to student events helps, but not being in those spaces, not showing up in those spaces where they need that help, you're not doing anything. Performative activism is going to events, saying you were there, taking a picture, being like, we went to this event. But showing up in those spaces where they need, for APAC, going to try to understand, going to other events, going to their student orgs, that's where you can make real change. Going to an event where everyone else is going to in order to enjoy the culture and be enriched and involved is something that anyone can say. But going and showing that you're there and you're present is the real matter.
And then a rebuttal by Madrigal.
So there was a Try to Understand that happened, I think it was in October and November, where only Braxton showed up. And Braxton showed up, made a quick statement about how we all need to live in peace, and then he left, right? But Nick was not there. Also, when you want to talk about, oh my God, I lost my train of thought, and I had a really powerful statement. That is not good. Yeah, it is really funny, Ashton, actually. Yeah, I'm just going to have to drop this one.
My response is my name was
Yeah, you can have a rebuttal.
I wasn't at that Try to Understand in October because I was fulfilling my responsibility as student body president and serving on the board of governors for the board meeting. That's why I wasn't there.
Thank you, and I think we're ready for another question from the audience.
We would also like to announce we are at time, but we will keep going for a little while longer.
few more questions. I'll take you. Yeah.
Because of, yeah.
Sure.
This question is for the DeSalvo Dietz ticket. You both have mentioned your administration has abolished U+2. That's great. The unfortunate reality is that the bill that will abolish U+2 has not been signed into law yet and has actually been sent back to the House to review an amendment. How would you both plan to reconcile this promise if it does not end up getting passed into law?
Well, I speak with such confidence about U+2 being eradicated because for the last 2 years I've been pressuring Governor Polis to do something at the state level in regards to occupancy. This is a priority of his, including the realm of affordable housing generally. I've been pestering him about it for the last 2 years, and House Bill 24-1007 was actually one of his priorities that he put through. So the idea that the governor doesn't sign a bill that he pushed through is pretty wild to me. It will be done, and we can focus on better things in ASCSU.
And Nick and other members of ASCSU have been able to do this because we've changed the approach that we take this year. In the past, it's been a combative approach. Now we're looking for a collaborative approach, and that's how we want to define ASCSU going forward in the DeSalvo Dietz administration.
I see a rebuttal.
Talking about U+2, I just want to give a proper thank you to a lot of people. Madeline Camberg, Benton Rosser, Jorge Garcia, Evan Welch, City Council, YMIBY, Fort Collins, Domestic Scholars of America, Strong Towns, Fort Collins, Kate Conley, Matthew Banner, Mia Ritter, Ben Rosser, James Burton, Adam Eggleston, City Council Action Committee, Marcus Zacharias, Jason Waller, Alejandra Caseda Stoner, Christian Dixon, Diane Egram, Faraz Bukhari, Crystal Boyer, Jamie Binder, Elisa Barron, Alicia Smith, Hayden Deason, Angela Hernandez, Arisa Puckett, Bianca Esperanza, Charlie Williamson, Cole Lindsay, Dane Dinson.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next question.
Hello, hello. Traditionally, ASCSU has been a very white space. How do you and fellow ASCSU leadership plan to open the space for students with marginalized for students within marginalized communities, so their voice can also be properly represented?
Yeah, you can start down there. that works.
With Senate, at least being the Speaker of the Senate, I think I've encouraged a lot of students from a lot of different places to get involved and to sit in. And this year I've seen the most collaboration. I've seen the most openness. I've seen the most willingness to talk and to collaborate. And so I think I've done it within Senate, and I don't have any doubt that we could do it within the executive branch and ASCSU in whole if we were to win these positions. Just because we're doing it now, what means we can't continue what we're doing.
And we also want to be able to go to the places that hold the most identities, such as SDPS offices and student orgs that are made of marginalized communities, because those people want to have their voices heard, and being in executive cabinet is one of the best ways that they can do that, because they can speak for people who have not had their voices heard throughout the years here at CSU, and we can really grow that within the next years.
I think the first step to doing that is recognizing it. So recognizing and naming that ASCSU has been a historically white place and still has systems of white supremacy entrenched in its systems and going-ons. I think that needs to be addressed first. And after we can name that, we can start to work upon that. Also, it's about showing up when it really matters. So when there's a 5K for international students and that money goes to international student scholarships, we need to be there. We need to be showing up. Leticia will also tell you a lot on this.
Well, thank you for the question, Enoch. Again, it's about bringing people in, making sure that the team that you surround yourself with is better than you are. And that's really what the point is, because leadership isn't about top-down approaches. It's about building consensus and finding out what your team wants. And there's no better way to do that than building a team that is representative of CSU. That's exactly what I've done, and that's what I'm going to commit to doing.
And I see a rebuttal from Madrigal.
Yeah, so when you talk about ASCSU being represented, I think it's important to bring up the fact that ASCSU got accused of committing a microaggression to the APAC center, and now students no longer want Nick DeSalvo in that space because they do not feel comfortable. In fact, when he created apology letters, he had me go deliver them to them because the director themselves said that him being in that space was not going to make those students feel safe. So when you talk about representation and how you show up to these spaces, those things stick forever.
Thank you. And
first a rebuttal by Ayala.
And to add on to that, in Senate, we had a cultural significance presentation by APAC staff who felt that they did not get the apology that they deserved. I was CC'd on those emails that were sent to their director, Joanne. Joanne directed them to both the students who were harmed and who felt that that event hurt them the most. And I am good friends with both of them. They received nothing. They received not a single word from the executive branch and the people who were there at the retreat who caused this harm.
Thank you. And a rebuttal from DeSalvo.
So when we were made aware at the retreat that what had happened had caused deep harm, we immediately met with APAC, pro staff, and the students that were affected. We deeply apologized, and what we were told is that they wanted to see actionable steps rather than empty words. That's what we did. But respectfully, Leti, your title is Director of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. If we don't have a good relationship with SDPS offices, whose fault is that?
Thank you. And we will now be moving on to the next audience question. Right there, Gabrielle.
Okay. This, excuse me, this is for President DeSalvo. Your campaign is running on affordability, and the Collegian article about you says that you grew up, quote, very poor. Students are concerned that you could be out of touch with affordability. Could you please tell us which of the 2 homes your parents own that you grew up in?
Shut that
We
down.
can shut this question down.
Yep.
I'm more than happy to respond to it.
If he's willing.
Yeah, if you have questions about my financial background, you could contact the Office of Financial Aid. I get the full amount of the federal Pell Grant every single year. You have to be in poverty
The specific
level.
question was, which house did you grow up in?
You have to be in poverty level in order to do that. I know what the tactic is, but I'm not falling for it. There are students on this campus who are just like me, who have never had access to a college education. I'm fighting for them, and I will not apologize for that.
I think it's abhorrent that we promote inclusivity and we promote bringing people in, and the students that are marginalized, the students that come from unique financial backgrounds like Nick, are asked these questions that should not be asked of them.
Thank you.
All right, next question.
Hi. I wanted to ask about how you would plan to include disabled students and neurodivergent students coming from an around on that's on the autism spectrum. Being part of the disability community is one of my biggest things I feel like should be covered.
So something we really want to focus on is being in collaboration with the Accessibility Caucus that is currently running in Senate, because we want to make sure that everyone has accessible resources and accommodations for any events, for any sort of open forum, and we want students to be able to see that everything is just and that they have a fair and equal opportunity to be here and to be at CSU and to be able to grow in their education. And so we want to be able to also have people who are knowledgeable in our cabinet about accessibility to make sure that that's something that we can actually provide for everyone.
Also making sure any events or things that we host are accessible. Contacting people who have this knowledge that we may not know or we may not have off the top of our heads is the best way that we can serve students with disabilities and students who may need more accommodations than we do. And I know for myself, I'm an ASL minor, so I understand, and I'm reaching out to those people as
Thank
we
you.
speak.
Unfortunately, right now, accessibility is seen as a non-issue in our space, and that's not something that I can be okay with. That's something that needs to change and that ASCSU needs to be addressing. That's also why I decided to join the Accessibility Caucus this semester and then work with the Disability Club. We're really, really proud to say that we have the endorsement of the Accessibility Club, and that's not because we just randomly emailed them and wanted their name on our campaign. It's because we've really worked to create meaningful relationships and collaboration with these folks, and that's why they can say that they endorse us at this time.
To speak to students who identify as disabled generally, I've been working for the past year and a half on a $1 million transportation program to aid those with mobility-related needs in navigating the CSU campus. Starting in the fall, first day of classes, if you're eligible for this program, you can, with the click of a button, be transported from anywhere to anywhere else on campus via accessible van. Speaking to those with disabilities outside of the typical the physical disability realm, I see the Disability Club president over there who had the pleasure of meeting at Sammy's Accessibility Caucus the other day, and that goes back to our pledge to fund student organizations. Student organizations like yours know the students that are a part of them, know how to equip them, know how to build them up, and the best way we can do that is give you the resources that you deserve and that you need to build your members.
Thank you. And we're going to move on to our next question from the audience. Go way back there.
Hi, so I'm a freshman here at CSU, and it can be rather intimidating sometimes entering these spaces and approaching upperclassmen, but I try to push myself because I do hope to be involved with CSU one day, and I just want to say congratulations to everyone sitting up there. You all look wonderful, and I hope to maybe be in one of your positions one day. But I recently had an incident with one of y'all's campaign teams, and I had asked them a couple questions, and I did not feel heard. I felt dismissed, and I don't know, it was very clear that they weren't interested in hearing what I had to say, and I'm a little upset about that. And so my question is, how is it that you will ensure not only yourself, but members of your campaign team make sure every student at CSU feels heard and respected?
We can start down at the end on the very left. Again. Very right. Sorry. Oh, crazy.
So we want to make sure that with everyone that we would hire in our cabinet knows that accountability is something that is very important, because you need to make sure that you are accountable for your actions, and everyone deserves to be heard, because this should be an open and welcoming space for all students' voices to be heard. And so we want to make sure that we are being proactive with how we make these decisions and what choices we make and how we can go about speaking to students, because we want people to be engaged.
I first have to say sorry that happened. That's terrible. You should feel heard and you should feel seen at this school. I know for us, our elections team is very diverse. We have a lot of people who understand marginalized identities, and we have a lot of people who hold marginalized identities on our team. I would love to speak to you after this, mostly getting your input on what happened, seeing how we can improve on what happened in that situation. But something we plan to do is just make sure they're all aware of what they're saying, how they're talking to students.
Yeah, Yeah, again, just like what Ava said, we are so sorry. That's unacceptable. That should have never happened to begin with, especially when you're running to be the representation that they're asking for. As your campaign team, they are representing you as an entity. As to our campaign, we were very specific as to who we chose to represent us. Every single person that's on our campaign, we truly believe in all that they have to offer. We have a lot of folks who have marginalized identities who are deep in our hearts of who they are as human beings, because like Georgia said, we value authenticity, and we deeply think that everybody that is in our campaign is in it for good reasons, because they care about other people and about us and about students, and that is why they're helping us with our campaign.
Students shouldn't only feel heard, they should be heard. And I think it comes down to something very simple: listening. There are two types of listening: active listening, listening to understand, or listening to respond. We have to ensure that whenever we're in a dialogue with someone, we aren't listening to them in order to get out what we want to say. We're listening to them to genuinely try to put ourselves in their shoes and understand what they're going through. I think that approach is what you have to do when you're representing 33,000 students, because I can't relate to all 33,000 students. I can relate to students like me and myself. And so that active listening portion, really listening to understand, I think that's the key. But I am sorry that you did have that experience.
Thank you. Next question. Right here, in the front, first chair.
We've heard a lot about diversity, equity, and inclusion, but it's been mostly focused on physical diversity or diversity of backgrounds. How are you guys going to promote diversity of thought in your cabinets? How are you guys going to work with people that disagree with you?
We can start left to right this time.
I think we do what we just did. I do not treat Georgia and Leti, or really Claudia and Ava, any differently because they're running against me in this race. They work for me, and I value their perspective and experience. And I think when you approach issues like that, where you value the skills that a certain individual brings to the table, that's what it's about. And it's about surrounding yourself with people that see the world differently than you, and that encapsulates political identity as well. I disagree with Ken Buck quite substantially, but there's a large swath of the student body who has the same political affiliation as Ken Buck. And when you're student body president or vice president, you represent those students too.
I think we also need to think about our internal culture, because internal culture shapes external culture. And so if we have people from all areas on campus and in our cabinet, and not just in our cabinet, on BSOF, on our Board of Student Organization Funding, on LSAB, the Legislative Strategic Advisory Board, all of these different places need to be representative of many different places on campus. So I think about specifically like majors. So we need to make sure that we have folks that are experts. Like, if we're thinking about health and wellness, we need to make sure that there's folks who are experts on health and wellness and who are literally studying to become health and wellness experts to be in those positions. When we think about accessibility, we need to make sure that there's folks who are learning about those philosophies and contexts in our spaces, and we need to make sure that we're really reaching out all across campus. So not just focusing our efforts within the Laurie Student Center or within places that are populated by students, but reaching out and thinking, what are we missing? Where are we missing the mark, and where do we need to be addressing that?
I first like to start off and say, I work for the students. I was elected into this position. I work for the students. I work for the 33,000 students that only about 2,600 voted for me, which had the most votes from last year's election. I work for those students. And to continue on with, I think the best way to include all speeches is to sit in those rooms with people who disagree with you. Sit in those rooms where people will tell you that, hey, I think we should change it. Be open to feedback, be open to criticism, because that is the only way we are going to include everyone. If we don't have people who disagree with us in a space, we're not learning anything. We're reaffirming our own ideas, and we're reaffirming the things that we think are helpful, which may not be helpful to every student. So I think mostly sitting in a room that is with different diverse voices and with different opinions is always better than sitting in a room with people who look like you and who agree with you.
Thank you. DeSalvo with a rebuttal.
I couldn't agree more with what Ava just said. You have a responsibility as a student leader to be in rooms with people that you disagree with, especially if those people are high-ranking elected officials. How often does Ken Buck get a different perspective? Very seldomly. And so it's important to be in the rooms with people to show that there is a world that exists outside of the eastern plains of Colorado. And that's a very diverse world that Ken Buck doesn't typically get to interact with. So being in rooms with people that you disagree with and don't see eye to eye with is vital. And you have to do that as a student body leader representing all the students that go here.
Thank you. Then Ayala with the rebuttal.
Yeah, I grew up in Los Angeles. I'm originally from California. I've actually talked to Karen Bass, Gavin Newsom, and a lot of our representatives in California. And I've gotten their opinions and I've gotten their statements on different things. Some of them came to my high school to speak. And so I've met with those people, and I've met with people who have different opinions with me. And talking to different legislators and different people in government is something that I've been doing since high school. I was lucky enough to have those opportunities because of where my high school is and because of where I grew up. And I did not take those opportunities for granted. I took those opportunities and learned what other people were thinking that were different than me.
And then Madrigal with a rebuttal.
I also agree that you need to listen to people that disagree with you because that's how you become a better person and that's how you grow. For those that don't know, I'm part of the Obama Foundation, and this last November I got to go to the Democracy Forum where Barack Obama gave a speech about the importance of listening to people that don't agree with you and being able to move forward, right? But I think one of the things that he said that stuck with me is that it's not just about disagreeing and moving forward, it's about why you disagree. Because if you disagree with me because we need to be working in different levels and we need to be fixing, like affordability, if it's a U+2 issue or if it's because students can't afford it for different reasons, then we can talk about that.
And we'll take another question from the audience now. I'll go right here in the middle. Yes, you.
Hello. My question is mostly directed towards you two. And I'm going to end up backtracking to earlier parts in this discussion when we were heavily talking about community, because your two candidates have been on y'all's necks about how you should be interacting with the community. Recently, your comments have sounded surface level in comparison. I am curious about how you plan on rectifying what seems to be the damages that you have done with the community centers where they do not feel comfortable reaching out, where they do not feel comfortable rectifying these gaps in how we build our communities. Where do you plan on actively rectifying it instead of just surface leveling, saying, oh, I've tried, I've done this, I've done that. Where do you actually plan to? With words, with actions, with it all. Because right now, because I do work in the student organizations, I work for BSA and United Women of Color, where do you actively plan on showing up?
Well, yeah, I think it's a good question. It's a very valid question. I've had this philosophy not only through my service as president, but with this campaign, is no stone left unturned. This week we visited, what is today, Tuesday? It's either this week or last week, they kind of just melt together. We visited United Men of Color to talk about the issues that are important to us and the issues that are important to them. And conversations like that are what keep me invigorated. Small sit-down conversations with 7 or 8 students where you can just be real and talk to people and get to know where they're coming from. That's how we start. We start on an individual basis. It's not nice to have your character questioned, but as ASCSU president, you're the figurehead, and you get your character questioned all the time. I want you to know that's not who I am.
Thank you.
I'd be more than willing to have a conversation directly with you to let you know who I am.
And we have a rebuttal.
So President DeSalvo, you mentioned that you were able to go to UMC to present, but would you also be willing to go to other student organizations that does not just have staff in your executive branch working within that executive branch or working within that organization, because it's important to go to all representation and not just someone that you have a connection with.
Yeah, absolutely. We're going everywhere. Like I mentioned earlier, we went to the iftar, and that wasn't as a campaign. That was me going as student body president, supporting other students that were hosting an event. I've been to a number of the Jewish student organizations events, being in community with them. A lot of this job is FaceTime with students and just being in community with them, getting to know their concerns. That's what you have to do. That's what I have done. Regardless of which connections I use to get there, we have an obligation to do that. And when you're serving everyone, you have to be in those spaces.
The rebuttal from Madrigal.
So you said you went to Ramadan Iftar. Me and Georgia and both of those candidates were there from 6 till 9:30, and then we went into the office of ASCSU where you were sitting. And I'm assuming you went 30 minutes later, or did we just not, or 30 minutes before the event ended, or did we just not see you at the event?
That was less of a rebuttal and more of a question, but I'll answer it. The event had lasted until 10 p.m., and we had showed up at about 8 o'clock. We had convened in the ASCSU office to kind of meet up, and Leti had told us that the event was over, that they were putting food away and putting tables away. I don't think it's very inclusive to try to prevent your student body president from being in community with a community on campus that needs that community style building.
Oh, you can have another rebuttal.
Yeah. Again, that was at 9:30. By the time we left, it was 9:35, and you guys were still in the room, which meant that by that time, they had already taken out the food. So I did not lie, and you're calling me a liar, and we left when the food was getting taken away. We literally saw the food leave.
I think we can let Ava answer this question, or maybe even Ben Torres-Doxy, who handed me milk there. I don't know.
We will keep all questions to the candidates and candidates only. Ayala, you have the floor.
Yeah, I was there at the iftar event, and I helped out with APAC staff. I helped them clean up after. I was in community. I was at that event. And also, me and Claudia's, our campaign is endorsed by SWANA, the people who hosted this event. And they endorsed us not just because, like Jorji said, we asked them to, but because we've been in community. We sit with them. We talk. I was at the LSC until 11 o'clock that night, helping APAC, helping them clean up, sitting in their office and talking to the students. I was there. And I definitely did see Nick, Michael, and Ashton walk in. And not only is it great that they are in community, but they weren't there early enough. They didn't get to see all the people there, all the outside community. It's great to see those events because it brings in not only students, but the community as well.
Thank you. For the interest of time, we are taking one more question.
Choose wisely.
No. You know, got me stressed up. Good.
With your heart, close your eyes.
Right here.
Hello, I work in the University Policy Office, so I get hundreds of emails a day, and what I've recently seen, and is a big issue in the University Policy Office, is that every time someone of ASCSU comes to a position, we are asked the same thing over and over again, to same the exact same guides and illustrations and everything every single time a new administration comes in. So my question is, exactly how are we ensuring that ideas, projects, and materials are passing to the next administration and not graduating?
Well, I guess I'll answer it. I'm not graduating. I'm running for a second term, but I will make the dedication right now that regardless of however this election turns out, my loyalty is to the 33,000 Rams that go here and ASCSU. I will ensure that we have a peaceful transfer of power. I know that's kind of something strange nowadays that you have to talk about, but it will be a streamlined transition, and I will ensure that whoever has the honor of being in the position of president and vice president has the tools necessary to be successful. I'm willing to connect them to as many resources as they need.
Absolutely. And I'm happy to say that I'm the only candidate here that sits on the Student Fee Review Board. And that institutional knowledge is key in continuing the good work that we've done this year. As Chief of Staff, I'm already laying out plans, comprehensive plans, to ensure that, like Nick said, no matter who wins this election, the transition process.
We are moving
will
on
be
to the
smooth.
next candidate.
Like I said, and like we've been constantly reiterating through our campaign, we believe in the power of authentic connection, and that's where it starts. So getting our members in cabinet and executive positions who have done such amazing work and have so many amazing accomplishments this year in actual contact and relationship with the people who are gonna take their jobs next. Rather than just writing a report and receiving a report from the person who was in your job last, we want to make sure that you're set up with the person who knows your job the best because they've done it already. We really want to make sure that those points of contacts are established and that they're also points of contact that our directors can rely on throughout the year. That if they have a question, they have the number of the previous director and they can text them and be like, hey, what did you do with this? Where did you find issues with this program and what do you think could be better in this program? Or how did you navigate this system?
Thank you.
So we really want to make sure that everyone who is coming into these next roles will have all the information and all the questions that they have answered so that there's no concerns. But if they do have some throughout the year, that they can reach out to the person who was previously in that job, because Ava and I, we are not graduating. So whoever's in our positions next, they will be able to constantly contact us and ask us any questions, and we'll be able to answer all the concerns so that they know and that they are 100% ready and continue to do their job well.
I've also said on SFRB, I created a committee within ASCSU. I've submitted bills. I've submitted internal documents. I have done almost everything that you can with ASCSU except for serve an executive and judicial. But even then, I've had contacts, I've had relations, I've had working and doing different things. And so I think I am definitely a resource that I will give to the next administration, next people.
With all of that being said, that will wrap up our time for questions. We will now provide each of you a minute to provide any closing remarks to your voters, starting with Ayala, and Paraiso. Your closing statements.
One thing we have to end with is that no matter what, who wins, we're here for the students. I'm not in this role because I'm a political science major or social work major who wants to get their foot in the door at some office. I'm a zoology major, and I really love doing this for students, and I really love helping, and I really love reaching out. So no matter what, if I don't get this position next year, I still plan to reach out. I still plan to be there for students.
So we want to be able to just step up to the challenge and create new opportunities for all students. And we are ready to be a leadership role and a role model for everyone on campus. And we want to be able to see change and see growth within this community. And even if we don't win, we still want to support no matter what, because anyone here is qualified to do this job. We just want to say that we are here for the students and that we want to continue to grow.
Leti and I know what we value, and we're not as afraid to embody that or say it. And I think that's something that we bring to the table. I also want to take this time and just let y'all know that after the debate, if you guys want to come talk to me about anything, I'm going to open myself up as an open point of access for y'all. If we're not embodying and having these conversations, we can't get anything done. And we have an amazing vision for CSU, but we can't manifest that without y'all. So please come talk to us, have a conversation with us, send us a message on Instagram if you can't think of something right now. If you are passionate about something and you want to see it on campus, we want to hear about it.
Like Claudia and Ava were saying, we're also here for the students. We show that by being part of the different communities. Both Georgia and I work in different offices all around CSU because we care about students and serving students. So no matter what the election is, we're always going to be public servants for students and for other people everywhere.
Make no mistake, affordability is the #1 issue that we have to tackle, and all of the things that were talked about tonight are fantastic, but they all stem from one root cause, and that's the inaffordable nature that going to school at CSU presents and living in the city of Fort Collins presents. We have to do everything in our power to protect our most vulnerable communities so that they can stay at CSU, and that starts with creating a real culture and an understanding that that CSU is for everyone, and that includes our most financially vulnerable student populations as well.
At the end of the day, Nick and I are committed to serving every single one of the 33,000 Rams that walks across the plaza, walks across the campus, and finds community here at CSU. But institutional knowledge is key to be able to do that to the best of ASCSU's ability. And we're determined to continue the work of affordability and work and student experience that we've done this year and continue that on to next year.
Thank you. This concludes the 2024 ASCSU presidential and vice presidential debates.
Voting is available. Oh, that was nice, you guys. All right. Voting is available for students on RamWeb from April 1st through the 3rd. Thank you for watching.
How's it going, y'all? We're CTV. We're a student-run TV station that helps inform the CSU community here in Fort Collins and on campus. As you can see, we've got a lot going on.
We feature award-winning shows that go live at 7 p.m. on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday nights, featuring sports, news, entertainment, and so much more. And that's really just scratching the surface.
Now down here is where the magic happens. As the only broadcast news station in Northern Colorado, our anchors and our multimedia journalists have a passion for reporting on local topics in the city that we call home.
How's it going, Ram fans? Welcome back to CTV Sports.
Thanks, Madeline. If you prefer exciting content over bland news, sports is for you. We've got reporting, video production, and so much more, with a focus, of course, in local athletics. We're the definition of entertainment. And speaking of entertainment,
this is where the real fun happens. In the entertainment department at CTV, there are a variety of shows to choose from. You could host your own game show, hone your inner Gordon Ramsay with CTV Cooks, rock out with local musicians on local beats, or get all your nerd news from CTV Geeks.
Y'all quit being so geeky.
The possibilities are endless.
And if you're more into being behind the camera, then Studio Crew might be for you. You can learn how to man cameras, run a switchboard, or even direct your own show.
I swear, if this TriCaster breaks one more time, I'm gonna lose my flippin' mind!
and well, that's what CTV has to offer. Check the link in the bio to find out more.
Go Rams!